Welcome back. Thanks for watching Action for Living. This is the second part of Act 2, which is continuing to focus on the acceptance of discomfort. Here's a quick recap from part 1. Currently, you may be avoiding discomfort. Avoidance is the number one coping strategy for most people, as it seems helpful in the short term by reducing the pain, but in the long term it makes the problem worse and prolongs your suffering. We talked about acceptance, noticing your thoughts, feelings, physical sensations, whatever they are, and allowing them to be there without attempting to get rid of them. Acceptance is about having the experience, like we did with the gripping the hand exercise. It's also important to consider the difference between what we can and can't control. Accepting what we can and cannot control may help reduce our suffering. Today's session is all about one way that we can develop our ability to use acceptance through something we already introduced in the first session, mindfulness. Here's the definition of it. Mindfulness is the awareness that arises from paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally to things as they are. So it's a little bit more than just being in the moment. It's on purpose. There's a sense of intention to it. It's in the present rather than the past or the future. And non-judgmentally. This doesn't mean without any judgment at all, as this is very difficult, but kind of moving in that direction, noticing our tendency to judge experiences as good or bad, and just noticing that and not fusing with them. So mindfulness is a diffusion skill that can be practiced and developed. If you're already familiar with mindfulness, hopefully you'll learn some new things in today's session, or at least further embed your existing understanding. Let's watch a short video of John Kabat-Zinn that further explains what mindfulness is.
My working definition of mindfulness is that it's the awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. So it's awareness, and the awareness is cultivated by paying attention. And in a particular way, on purpose, in other words, intentionally, in the present moment, which is the only moment we ever have to be alive in, and then most challenging of all, non-judgmentally. And that means, of course, we have judgments about everything, but to not be caught in those judgments so that we color everything through our likes and dislikes. So that sounds pretty simple. Okay, paying attention, I can do that. But actually, when you start to pay attention to how much we pay attention, a lot of the time our minds are all over the place and we have a very hard time sustaining attention. And our attention is not very vivid and it's not very stable. And teachers go out of their minds screaming and yelling at their classes of students, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. But nobody learns to pay attention by being screamed at to pay attention. So, but it's something that we can teach to people how to pay attention, and it's very, very powerful to learn how to sustain attention moment by moment by moment by moment by moment.
Mindfulness skills in ACT are being aware of ourselves, being self-observant, looking at what we are doing and being aware of it. Diffusion, or stepping back from unhelpful thoughts, not being so tangled up with thoughts, not avoiding, just fully experiencing them. Being willing and accepting of discomfort and making room for all of our experiences in a given situation, as the more we fight, the harder something becomes. Being in the present moment, this moment. Mindfulness sounds relatively simple. It's paying attention in the here and now. But often we find this very difficult. We as humans are very easily distracted. So where does your mind take you? We find it easy to travel in our minds to the imagined future with what if thoughts, or to the remembered past with perhaps I should have thoughts, neither of which are really true representations. And these abilities are very useful to review or to plan, yet all the while we're missing the present. This is what mindfulness might help us to increase the amount of time we spend in the actual present moment. And sometimes it feels like we're at the mercy of our minds, getting swept along by worries or drowning in memories, a bit like a boat being tossed around in a storm. Similarly, imagine yourself as the boat and your thoughts, feelings, and pain as the storm. You might need an anchor to allow yourself to be anchored in the present. It's tough being in the now, so something that we can use as an anchor might be really useful. And although our mind might shift, our body is always in the here and now. So perhaps we could use all of our physical senses to anchor us. We invite you now to do a brief mindfulness exercise. So please sit with both feet planted flat on the floor and put down any devices or anything else that's in your hands. First, just look around you and notice 5 things you can see as best you can without judgment. Just 5 different things. Maybe naming them, maybe saying what they are, but just noticing them. Now for a moment, closing your eyes and listening for 5 distinct sounds. Maybe sounds coming from you or sounds around you. And then keeping your eyes closed, just notice 5 sensations in your body. 5 things you can feel. 5 things within you. Have a think for a few moments and reflect on how that experience was for you. Did you notice that every sight, sound, and feeling was experienced in the present? Mindfulness exercises are not designed to reduce or control or avoid unwanted thoughts and emotions. So even if any thoughts came up, could you let them be there, notice them, and gently focus back on the task? Remember that as the point is not to relax or control your thoughts, it's about noticing your mind at work and how we can use our senses to notice the here and now. Furthermore, mindfulness is a daily practice skill, so don't beat yourself up if you struggled with this. Here's another definition of what it means to be mindful by Russ Harris, author of The Happiness Trap. He says that mindfulness is consciously bringing awareness to your here and now experience with openness, interest, and receptiveness. Being more mindful means being open, curious, and interested. There's an idea called the beginner's mind, approaching things without preconceptions, a bit like a child might. Think about the first time you saw snow or the sea. Or if you can't remember and you have children or grandchildren, think about the first time they experienced something new. Consider that in the mind of the beginner, there are many possibilities. In the mind of the expert, there are few. That's a quote I really like that really speaks to that sense of aiming to be a perpetual beginner rather than an expert. It's all about approaching things a bit like a child would, and having this perspective encourages a sense of joy. If you think about children, how maybe they live in the moment, they're imaginative, they're creative, they have lots of energy, they ask lots of questions. So give yourself permission to stop and find these again. It's all about being interested in what's going on around you rather than totally consumed with your thoughts. Bringing this same curiosity to pain or discomfort is, of course, a challenging part of this practice. The potential benefits of mindfulness have been widely researched, and here's a list. Mindfulness is commonly and increasingly being used and has been found to be beneficial for nearly all mental health difficulties. Mindfulness can also reduce the production of stress hormones, result in less rumination, less thinking, and getting consumed in our thoughts, can improve our memory, develop our psychological flexibility, have a positive impact on our relationships, and even has positive implications for our immune functioning. Mindful breathing exercise. As we discussed before, all of our senses can provide us with an anchor to our present moment experience as it is, rather than how our mind tells us it is. The breath is another anchor often used in mindfulness practice. I would like to invite you, if you feel comfortable in doing so, to participate in another mindfulness exercise. So please sit in a relaxed but dignified posture and allow your eyes to close or to gaze softly downward in front of you. And perhaps with your feet flat on the floor, perhaps placing a hand on your belly or abdomen and taking 3 deep breaths in and out, in and out, in and out. Just paying attention without trying to make the breath different from how it is. Notice if your mind is wandering, bringing it back again and again. The aim being to notice anything that comes up, not to still your mind or be relaxed. Just to focus on your breath, however you find it. And then when you become distracted, gently come back to this in-breath or this out-breath once again. Let's continue that for a short while in silence. Remember that you will always be able to shift your focus to your touch, smell, taste, sounds, or sights. You will also be able to focus on your breath, the rising and falling of your chest and abdomen. The key is to just do some practice, no matter how short, every time that the idea pops into your mind, rather than simply intending to do it later and keep putting it off, no matter where you are or what you're doing. Our verbal minds have been conditioned to make very strong links between thoughts and actions, feelings and thoughts, actions and feelings. This fusion, the ands, is the strong links between each of them. Next week focuses more on fusion. Diffusion is a mindfulness skill that helps us to move towards the present moment, taking a step back from our thoughts. In a mindful state, you notice your thoughts and feelings as a more detached observer, without judgment. You simply notice and let things be. As a mindful observer, you're not concerned with whether thoughts are true or false, appropriate or inappropriate, silly or serious, as you recognize thoughts are just activities of the mind. Sometimes people find it helpful to see themselves as the sky and thoughts as clouds. We know that clouds always pass, and it's the same for our thoughts. They all eventually pass. Some might whiz past, others sticking around a bit longer, some bigger than others, lighter or darker than others. And yet the clouds on the sky are constantly changing. It's remembering that thoughts are not the absolute truth or reflection of reality, but that thoughts are just thoughts. Mindfulness allows us to distinguish thoughts as helpful or not. So we're not asking, is this thought correct? Instead, we want to know, is this thought helpful so I can live my life the way I want to live it? Your thoughts without reacting to them. Though this may sound odd, in ACT there is a large distinction between reacting and responding, which we'll focus on next. Reacting and responding. Reacting is an instant, automatic, uncontrolled, and driven by reflexes and emotions. Whereas responding is more active, more thoughtful, guided less by emotion and more by logic. Responding involves deliberately choosing an action based on a conscious awareness of what's going on right now. So it's switching on your logical brain based on information and considerations of the long-term effects, helping us stay in line with our values. Mindfulness helps us to respond in our best interests rather than reacting impulsively, as acting impulsively can often lead to suffering. We spoke a lot about suffering in previous sessions. This could also lead to increased feelings of guilt or embarrassment or anger, or falling out of relationships with people around you. And here's an example to hopefully clearly demonstrate the difference that we're talking about between reacting and responding. So, if Jane recently quit smoking due to negative implications that it's having for her health and also to save some money, what will Jane do when she feels a craving for nicotine? She's got two options, to react or to respond. She might react on automatic by reaching for a cigarette and experience suffering as a result of the feelings of disappointment, guilt, frustration, and so on. She might respond by considering the alternatives and still decide to smoke a cigarette, but suffer less suffering due to more of a sense of choice or being in control. So responding and reacting may look the same to someone else as they end up with the same outcome, but actually the process is very different, and the experience for Jane is different. Here's a quick recap then. Mindfulness is a willingness or acceptance of discomfort and making room for all our experiences, not trying to push away our thoughts or feelings, just allowing them to be. Your mind is a time traveler, but your body is always in the present moment. So remember the slide with the continuum from past, present to future. Often people identify that they spend a lot of time worrying about either the past or the future. Use your senses such as touch, sight, taste, hearing, smell to anchor, or use your breath to anchor. Mindfulness allows us to respond by deliberately choosing a reaction based on conscious awareness of what's going on right now, and not react in an instant, automatic, uncontrolled way. So mindfulness can be practiced formally as a form of meditation in which time is specifically set aside to engage in it. This could be as short as a few minutes or as long as several hours. We are more than aware, though, that it isn't always practical to engage in formal practices, as we all have very busy lives. And there are many types of more informal mindfulness practice that can be carried out anytime or at the same time as other activities. Remember that mindfulness is essentially just being aware, so can be applied to any activity. You don't have to close your eyes and focus on your breath to be mindful. So you can practice mindfulness in any of the following situations. Here's just a few examples: eating, doing the ironing or dishes, having a bath or a shower, brushing your teeth, exercising. As you can see, these are all things that you might do on a regular or even daily basis, and are really useful ways of making mindfulness a regular practice too. Maybe over the next few days you could try mindful eating by bringing a sense of curiosity and slowing down, paying attention to your food. Noticing how it looks, how it smells, how it feels to the touch, how it sounds to eat it. Noticing any thoughts, ideas, or stories that your mind makes up about the food. Any judgments, any liking, disliking, indifference, or particular thoughts about this practice itself, like this is stupid. Also notice any strong memories that come up. Or you could try mindfulness while doing the chores, for example, washing the dishes. Notice the sound of the water filling the bowl, the smell of the washing up liquid you've used, the bubbles forming, feeling of the water on your hands. Notice the motion of your hands when washing the dishes. Notice how your mind gets pulled away to other thoughts. Or if you're having a bath or a shower, notice the sound of the water filling up the bath, the smell of the bubble bath or shower gel, feeling of the water on your body, your hands, your feet, noticing the heat or coolness, the movement of water around you, and any thoughts that come into your mind. Above all, just be curious, be open, be interested. So for Act 2, both this video and the previous video have been focusing on moving from avoidance to acceptance, both the A's in our fear to dare acronyms. This shift from avoidance to acceptance can be facilitated by engaging in mindful activities. Increasing flexibility helps bring our awareness to the automatic and habitual behaviour we engage in. By increasing our flexibility, we're being able to open up more choices, strategies, and options. By trying some of the exercises in this video, you've already practiced being more flexible. For the home practice then, the first exercise is the cost of avoidance. This will help you to identify the things that you have been or are avoiding in your life and what you're doing in order to avoid these things. After identifying these, it asks you to reflect on whether this got rid of your painful experience in the long term, whether it brought you closer to having a rich, full and meaningful life. Has avoiding been helpful for you, particularly in the long term? It also asks you to think about the cost in terms of time, energy, money. Completing this will help you to understand the true cost of avoidance in your life. Exercise 2 is the table of control. This involves exploring the things in your life and considering which section of the table of control they fit into. It's attempts to control things in the last two columns that are detrimental and can increase our suffering. Recognizing what we can and can't control can be quite empowering. For more info on this, go back to the previous video. Exercise 3 is mindfulness exercises. And these encourage you to incorporate mindfulness into your day using some of the exercises we did in the video, such as noticing 5 things or focusing our attention on our breath. You'll find recorded guidance for these exercises on the website, along with the session summary for Act 2. As you do these exercises, allow your thoughts and feelings to be whatever they are. It's perfectly normal to be dragged away by thoughts, feelings, or sensations in our bodies. Simply notice where your mind has taken you, and then direct your attention back to the exercise once more. The other part of this is to encourage you to try some more informal mindfulness practices. So pick an activity that's part maybe of your morning routine, like brushing your teeth or having a shower, and then when you do it, totally focus on what you're doing. The movement, the taste, the touch, the smells, all of it. Also, maybe see if you can choose a domestic chore that you would normally try to rush through or distract yourself from. See what happens when you are more mindful, more aware of what's going on while you do that thing that normally you think of as difficult or uncomfortable, or that you'd rather just get it over and done with. Exercise 4 is the bullseye. As session 1 introduced us to ways of identifying values, this exercise looks at focusing on whether we're living up to them. Are we living our lives in line with our values? Exercise 5 is increasing flexibility. This involves you deliberately changing an action that you often do in the same way. In Act 1, Part 2, we asked you to change how you carry out a particular action, not necessarily doing it better, just doing it differently. So you are already having to be more flexible due to social distancing. Yet this exercise will look at further developing and increasing your flexibility by encouraging you to attempt to engage with a stranger. Picking somebody at random, smiling at them, saying hello, talk about the weather or their dog. As long as you keep your distance, you may well find that they're only too happy to talk to someone else about this shared experience of lockdown. Completing these daring actions may not only increase your self-esteem and confidence, but also your flexibility and sense of control. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's session on mindfulness, and remember, practice is key. Remember that this course is made up of 4 sessions or acts, and each is split into 2 parts over 2 videos. So in total there will be 8 videos. For each session there's a handout summarising the content discussed and also providing opportunities to practice the skills and techniques. You can find the handout on our website. The next session will be looking at the trouble with thinking. I hope you can join us again soon.